Good evening. Welcome to the October 3rd edition of the Amelia Village Council meeting. This time I entertain a motion from council to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, questions, roll call. We'll call that our attendance.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Follett.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber. Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Rouser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
All present except Ms. Gerber.
Let's all stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item on the agenda this evening is approval of the previous meeting minutes from September 22nd, 2011. That was a special session. This time I entertain a motion from council on that subject.
I make a motion. I'll second it.
Any discussion or questions?
Yes, Mayor. In council input, we need to change that from appropriations to employee manual.
Okay. Who made the original motion?
I did.
Would you
I'll amend it.
amend
As
it?
read.
And made the second?
Of course, I'll still second it.
Any other discussion? Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Follett.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Rouser.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
5-0, 1 absent. Passes.
September 19 minutes will be prepared for the next meeting. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yes. Unfortunately, didn't take everything home with me.
All right.
Could have given you the last 20 minutes of the meeting.
That's all right. All right. Before we move down to the next section, I want to bring one thing to council's attention. At the meeting on the 27th, council approved an ordinance number 2011-41, revising the Amelia Village Personnel Policy Manual. Just to refresh council's memories, this was brought about by the fact that one of our employees gave us notice and moved on. And I'm going to read the first couple lines of the ordinance. Whereas the vacation leave policy incorporated into the Amelia Village Personnel Policy Manual has been the subject of confusion by employees.
Really?
Okay. The long and short of it is, we discussed this and passed the legislation where it cleared up the confusion. The employee whose departure brought this to our attention has an outstanding, he has outstanding vacation due him. So this time I'm just looking for a motion from council on authorizing his vacation payout.
Which is now in accordance with the
Right.
new legislation.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion or questions?
How much?
I think it's 1 week. I think he's got 1 week's vacation coming.
And it's one of the ones we've talked about in executive session, correct? Just
We
so
have
I
talked
know.
about it, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Follett.
Yay.
Mr. Hart.
Yay.
Mr. Rouser.
Yeah.
Mr. Thacker.
Yeah.
5-0, 1 absent.
Thank you. Kevin, I spoke with Adam today and informed him that after I had received council's approval on that matter, and you would become his contact person on clearing up the matter. Julie will contact him and let him know what we've done here this evening. So we can check his accrual balances, et cetera, and just let's get squared up with him. He says that the city of Milford still hasn't received. I know you said you sent a letter over.
I faxed it over, and the lady, can't remember her name, but she was basically in charge of their human resources. Oh, yeah, I've got it.
Okay. There's going to be some follow-up needed on that. So Adam will be talking to you, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Next item on the agenda, and I do not have a mayor's report this evening because I felt like this next this next topic was very important for tonight's meeting. I wanted to introduce and invite those who are running for council seats and those running for public office here in the village of Amelia, invite them here to make a presentation on their behalf as to their candidacy. We have 4 people who are running. I see that Renee, I knew that Renee was not going to be here tonight, and she is on the ballot for council. I imagine she'll take advantage of an opportunity at the next meeting to speak. Just going down the line, since I don't know some of these people, don't be offended if I don't recognize you. I have a Susan Ellis. Is Susan Ellis here? Okay, so Susan Ellis is not here this evening. Chris Dickerson, who is a candidate for village council. Chris, welcome. I thank you for coming, and thank you for taking the time to take a petition out for a council vacancy. This is an opportunity for you to sort of just address the camera and address the citizens of the village of Amelia, and basically talk about what your ideas are for your candidacy. And once we've gone through the candidates, we'll open the floor to residents and people here in the room to ask any questions. Are you okay with participating in that? Sure. I'm assuming that's why you're here? Yes. Thank you very much. I have another part of the exercise I'd like to give a try. I'd like to, in the interest of the camera, I'd like to give, just ask council members to have a seat out there. Let those candidates just sit right here and have an opportunity to sit here and just have a good shot at the camera. Is that okay with you, Chris? All right. I'm going to just, those of us who are not candidates, we'll just vacate.
You ain't going anywhere, Todd.
Right over here.
I'm going to take my placard down so he doesn't get blamed for being mean. The assassination attempt at any moment. Okay. Oh, you went back to you now? You're going to be in front of Bob Paula's name?
I'll figure out, let him have the camera.
All right. Well, this time, folks, I just wanted to give Mr. Dickerson an opportunity to present his ideas. As I understand it, Mr. Dickerson is a write-in candidate?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to speak on your behalf, so the floor is yours, sir.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Dickerson, obviously, as Mr. Mayor has announced me as. Running for Village Council as a write-in. I'd like to thank the mayor and members of council for inviting me here this evening to speak to you. My family and I have lived in the village for a little over 10 years. We live over here on South Klein. Many of you may be familiar with my home, which is a house that has the stream and the waterfalls in it. I've also got the giant Halloween spider that's on the roof, during this time of year. My wife Stacy, who is my best friend, we have 2 teenage daughters. They both started out in kindergarten here at the Amelia Elementary, and both of them now are in the Amelia High School and Middle School. My wife and I feel privileged to have raised our daughters in the Amelia Village. I'm originally from Norwood. When my daughters were born, I decided that rather than raising them in a big city, I wanted to bring them into a smaller community where we could raise them in a smaller, close-knit community, rather than where the family values isn't just within the home; it's within the community itself. You have to excuse me here if I start a little bit. I've been practicing my lines for several days and trying to go over everything so I don't miss anything here. So be patient with me. And if my face is a little red, it's not because I'm on the verge of a heart attack here. I was in the sun all day. So this is the end result of me working in the sun. Anyway, back to subject here. To tell you a little bit about myself, for 21 years, I owned my own business as a water feature specialist, as you can see from the landscape of my home. In the summer of 2009, the recession forced me to close down my business and go to work for someone else. Currently, I am an exterminator with Scherzinger Pest Control. Being a former small business owner myself, I'm a strong supporter of small businesses. Small business is what made this country what it is. In regards with our village, I am strongly against the earnings tax. This is not the time to be creating more tax burden on the citizens of our community. I can't afford it, and I'm sure many of you feel the same. This office, like any office, or not office, but excuse me here, kind of jumping over my stuff. Yeah, excuse me if I'm a little nervous too. It's been a long time since I've spoken in front of a group of people. The office needs to be more fiscally responsible with our tax dollars. If elected to this council, I will fight against any notions of imposing this earnings tax on the people, especially if it's without the choice of our voters. I will work with the mayor and councils to help find ways of creating more revenue for our village without sticking it to the taxpayers here. I strongly believe that our police department is an absolute must. Having these officers in our village not only keeps our community safer, but it's a big part of their daily presence is a big part of what makes us a close-knit community. I would also like to see our village bring back the events we used to have, such as concerts in the park, movies in the park. Would also like to see the village have more events, such as a Halloween or a Christmas festival. We need events where we can bring our community closer together, family events. If elected, I'm here for you. You know where I live. If you have any questions or want to discuss something, you can always stop by and knock on my door. All I ask is on November 8th that you consider me as council, and just remember that I am a writing candidate. If anybody would like a card, I have plenty.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Before we move to the question and answer period, we'll open the floor to Todd Hart, who's a candidate for mayor.
First of all, for all you who don't know me out there, my name's Todd Hart. I'll give you a little brief history about myself. I graduated Amelia High School in 1978. Went into the military right out of high school. Served 2 terms in the military, United States Army. Upon completion of my military, I decided I wanted to bring my family somewhere to a community that's small, a community that has values. So I sought out Amelia. Very happy I did. I'm very proud of where I live. I raised 5 children here. I have 1 adopted daughter, 4 of my own. My oldest being Jason, who owns a shop just outside of the village. My adopted daughter Lisa, who just graduated Southwest IU, and next week will start teaching. So very proud of her. My other daughter Jasmine, presently enrolled in Northern Kentucky University. My son Patrick, who graduated Northern Kentucky University in December, is now living in Bloomington, Indiana, and working. And then my youngest daughter, who just graduated The Ohio State University, and is presently working down in Cincinnati. Being said, I've got a really great woman, her name's Kathy, who's helped me raise these children. We sat down one day, I'm usually always busy, but now all the children are gone. I wanted to give back to the community what they gave to me and my children and her. So we thought about it, and she thought the best thing I could do is to run for council, which I did. I got elected to council. I'm very happy I did. Didn't think I would have the opportunity to run for mayor, but given the opportunity with the mayor we presently have not wishing to run again, and giving me that opportunity, which it'd be hard to follow in those footsteps, but hopefully I can do that. I would like to bring back some of those community values, bring back some of those things that people yearn for right now. With the economy the way it is right now, it seems like families are becoming more close-knit. And I think Amelia is still a great place to live, and I want to keep that close-knit and family activity and values going. So I know it's going to be a hard, tough campaign. I know I'm going to have to knock on a lot of doors. But if I can just get one vote out there, just one, then I think I can be the new mayor. And I appreciate the time that you've given me to talk to you. Thank you.
Sure he sold himself.
With your permission, I would open the floor to people here in the audience to ask any questions. If you just have a question, just stand and introduce yourself and just ask your question. We just ask that you keep your questions fairly brief. We're not going to time anything right now, but keep them fairly brief. And if we could keep this professional and amicable, try to use this for educational purposes for our voters so they have an opportunity to see who their candidates are.
Mayor, I have a question for Chris. Derek Campbell. I know you'd mentioned some activities that we no longer do, which we would like to bring back. One of the things we are doing is like a cruise-in next Saturday night, trying to get some more events back. Our main problem is volunteerism. So if you have any ideas that you might be able to bring to help increase some volunteerism?
Well, first thing would be getting the word out for the activities that we want to put together and open up for the community. Getting the word out and letting everyone know what we would like to do, I think will help invite people in to volunteer for these events. The main thing is just getting the word out to everyone, to let them know that what our agenda is, what we would like to do. We're looking for volunteers, and set a timeline of X amount of weeks or even months in advance. That way we have plenty of time to gather those people together.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Rosser, and I got a few questions. You kind of answered the first question about would you be in favor of earnings tax, which you said you did. Now, what would happen if it would come to there's no other revenue that you have streaming in? Would you still be in favor of not bringing on an earnings tax to the people?
It would be
If that was your only option.
not by imposing it. It would have to be by the choice of the voters.
Okay. And then my other question is, what made you want to run for council?
Well, I mean, other than the 2 seats that are open, I've lived here again for going on 11 years now, and I've seen the village and its highs and its lows, and I've seen this community slowly drift apart over the years. When I first moved here, we had a lot of events going on, and now there's not much of anything going on. Last year during the Christmas time, when there was the fear of losing our Christmas parade, that was one of the points that I realized that we need some change in this office. We need some people that care about the community, that want to keep this community together versus dividing it apart and it just be business as usual.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And then why did you just decide to be a write-in and not go out and collect signatures? What was the difference?
It was kind of a last-minute decision. I've been dwelling on it for some time. My wife has been pressuring me that I should go and run for it. The main reason was work-related. You know, I had started with Scherzinger Pest Control back in the January of 2010. Being self-employed for 21 years and then going to work for someone else is a complete 180 change in your lifestyle. And it's taken my wife and family and I some time to make those adjustments day to day, financially. And my fear for running when I was able to go out and collect the signatures was being able to make the time for this council and for the village. Fortunately, things have worked out very well in the last 6 months with my new employment, to where I now have the freedom to devote to this council and to devote to the people of this community.
Okay. And how many council meetings have you attended this year?
This year, just a few.
Okay.
I've attended some in the past,
Okay.
watched it on TV.
Okay. What was your feelings about when some of our residents were wanting to dissolve the village a couple years ago? What was your feelings on that?
Well, I mean, it was a sad idea of wanting to do that, but at the time, and the current mayor, it all goes back to imposing that tax, that earnings tax, without the choice of the voters. That was, at the time, my wife and I were losing our business. We were going through a lot of stress. And then to hear that the village is just going to stick us with a 1% earnings tax, it made me angry. Unfortunately, at the time, that was the only option that we had to stop this office from imposing that tax, again, without our vote.
So, by what you just said there, you were for dissolving the village.
I was
Correct.
part of that committee, yes.
Okay. Okay. And then just one other question. What is your platform that you're what do you want to see done and changed?
More leadership and management inside this office, more communication with people within the village. We need to bring more people to these meetings to get their ideas on what we can do in this village to bring the families together.
Right, I agree with you, because that's why we moved to this for a small community and that. And so I've been involved, probably lived here about 5 years now, and I've been to several meetings.
Good, good.
Todd,
Yes.
what is your opinion on the earnings tax?
Probably eventually, the way I see it now, something's going to have to be done financially for this village. My stance is I would prefer to have the voters vote on it. I totally agree in the voting structure, so I think it's their right. I don't like government telling me what I can and can't do. I think that's why the people have the voting ability to do that. I'm not opposed to putting it on the ballot and giving those people the choice.
So what you're saying is your choice is to put it out to the residents of the village
Yes.
to a vote and not go ahead and do a 1% earnings tax that the council can do without the voters.
No, I
Right.
do not. I want to put it out for the
Okay,
voters to make that
so
decision.
another question is then, what if the voters would not pass that?
The
Would you be
voters wouldn't
willing-
pass
wouldn't
that?
pass it? Would you be willing to recommend to the village council at that time to go ahead and pass a 1% earnings tax?
No, at that time, I would hope that the people know by the time we do the 1% to put it out to the people, that if they do not vote in favor of the 1%, then the village probably will fold up. I mean, I don't see any other way that we could not do that, being the finances we have. And pretty much, if they go to the polls and tell us that's what they want, then that's what they want, then that's what we should give them.
Correct. And then one other question for you. What was your stance on your opinion when we were wanting to, residents, not I was for saving the village. What was your stance on back in 2008 when people wanted to dissolve the village?
To be honest with you, I had mixed emotions. I had mixed emotions both ways, so I decided to come to a couple of the meetings. I thought the meetings were a total disaster. I thought both sides were not looking at the real meaning of why the dissolve was all about. So I backed off of it totally and just took a plain even stance, because I wasn't hearing from either side what I felt the real reason for the dissolved village was.
And just one more question for you, Chris. If, like I said, like if we would have to do the earnings tax and you put it to the voters and the voters decided not to do it, would you vote as being a voting member on council to go ahead and impose the 1% earnings tax without our votes?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other input from anyone in the audience?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Tom Burnett. I'd just like to, I'll start with Chris. How do you feel about code enforcement and getting a code enforcement officer? Since there seems to be no code enforcement whatsoever in the village.
Well, it would be a necessary expense. We have to have someone that's in
I
charge
think they
of
might
it.
be working on it now, but I'm not
Yes.
sure.
It's unfortunately, it's a necessary means in order to keep things in control.
Okay.
Someone has to be in charge of it.
What about you, Todd?
Actually, we are working on it right now. It has been proposed. We've actually put it out for bid. We've had some applicants apply, and I believe council and the mayor's decided the first of the year, we're going to let it go to the first of the year, and the new administration comes on, then we're going to pick that person and put that person in the zoning department.
Okay.
So it will be here in the first of the year.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, being a part of saving, the village several years ago, the one thing we would not, if we were able to do the earnings tax back then, I want to hear what you got to say. We would not be in the position we are financially right now. We would not be in this financial situation we're in. With our police department running in a possible deficit sometime next year, maybe sooner. Depends on how the numbers work out. The general fund is slated to go into negative. I was one that was for the earnings tax, but I was also one was for giving the residents a break on the earnings tax. Implement the 1% earnings tax, but give some back to the residents. So in other words, at that time, we were trying to draw revenue from the businesses that were in the village. We got a lot of negative because a lot of businesses would feel they would leave the village. Well, whether you have them or you don't, either side, we're still dealing with a deficit coming up. I want to know from both if the earnings tax is not a possibility, our levy process is obsolete. It's growing obsolete in all communities. It doesn't work 100% effective. And we're not passing them. We tried. I want to know what you guys, I chose not to run again because I'm going to be more effective out here in the audience. I want to know if you being elected, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to handle that? What are you going to do when we're running the deficit, the possible deficit? I think it's one thing that's definitely looming. The thing is to say we can't do an earnings tax and we can't do this is not a right answer. I've been up here too long to see the numbers. I was on the finance committee since it was initiated, and I recently resigned from it because I was not rerunning. But I've asked council many times to come forward and say what their ideas were. I was not getting any input. I want to know before I give you my vote. We'll see about getting that vote. You need one. But I would like some input on what your thoughts are. And I think the folks at home need to know that. Before giving you that one vote, and then, for yourself as well.
I guess I'll jump in here for a minute. I probably know a little bit better on the finances than he does. right now, we've got to get our numbers straight, because our numbers are everywhere.
That's dangerous.
And it's not good. I agree. But looking in the past, even before you came, if they'd done an earnings tax, it would have been great. It's just something that never happened. You know, there's other issues that's happened. We've lost property. We've lost potential investment that came in every month from past administration, not Leroy during his administration prior to him, that have put us in some of this situation. The economy has put us in this situation. The state is now taking money from all the villages and small cities, putting them again in more devastation with finances. But again, I guess my thing is, if we get to the point we have to do the earnings tax, I think we put it out, all the information we could possibly put out to the voters, and let them make that decision. Let them know if they don't pass the earnings tax at this point, we have to close the doors. So they're aware of that when that goes to the ballot.
Well, just as Todd said, it has to be left up to the voters. If the voters don't want this tax, then the only option would be the fold up shop, close doors out.
But that's not like the council can't make that decision to close shop.
Right. That would be the voters' choice to close shop.
But if they don't make that vote, and you're sitting up here struggling,
Well,
like we've been struggling, I've been coming to meetings since July of 07. And I've seen these struggles. I've seen where we were at our highs, our lows, our goods and our bads. But right now, we're trying to balance going in next year. And even myself sitting up there, it's to the point in the next 3 months, it's going to be a very, very difficult time to balance our budget and go into next year. And then, keeping the same services that we currently have.
I think you're right, Tim, but we're not the only ones in here, and we don't have buses to use as blackmail weapons, which is horrible. I mean, the school's in the same situation, asking for their earnings tax,
Right.
and or asking basically for their levy money,
Right.
and it's not fair how they're doing that.
Right.
So
No, and it's not blackmail, but it's just it's a legitimate question. I mean, I'm talking as a resident.
No, I know,
not as a
I'm
council
just
member.
talking-
I'm talking about a resident that is concerned about the village going in the future. And the thing is, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I just want to know, going into the next council back in January, where the feelings are. I was hoping they had more participation. The other two could be here this evening, because I would have liked to heard from two others as well.
and you do know, once I become mayor here, my vote, I won't have a voting
Right.
power. So it will be this council that makes that decision. I can bring my thoughts and recommendation, and then they can do what they want to do, because
right.
basically they
You
will
get to
have
be
the
the
power.
tiebreaker.
So
Yeah.
I could be the tiebreaker. Everybody's got. I see the tough times coming.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, we all have had to force our belts a little tighter and live within smaller means than what we're all used to.
Right.
Since this recession came on. Regardless of what level of government it is, whether it's a village or a township, state, federal, there's always room to work with some of the money. There's always waste. I don't care what level of government you're talking about, there's waste. Now, I can't sit up here and say, well, we need to do this, this, and this in order to bring more revenue in, because I'm not familiar with the financial situation and our options from the state and federal government that we have to work with. So, unfortunately, I don't have those kind of answers for you.
Right.
I sit up here asking for a vote as someone who's going to stand for the people and what's best for the people. I've worked all my life. I had my own business for 21 years, and unfortunately I lost it because of the recession. Being self-employed is a tough job. It's a 24/7 job. To allow government to tell us what we should be doing, the government is not, we are not employees of the government. The government is our employees. It's our choice. It's our decision on what should be done. And the way I look at it is, if the government's not going to do what's best for us, then we fire those people and we vote in new people.
Mhm.
I hope that somewhat answers your questions.
But I got something. But the thing is, like the mayor's always said, for our audience out here, in most cases, he could shoot a cannon through there and not hit anyone.
Mhm.
The thing is, there's not been anybody up here to give us a grade. To give us, unless it was something negative, if there was any positive, it was never really known. When we were trying to make the positive things go on. And it was just never realized until it was a negative. Then we filled the room.
Now, whose fault would you say that is? Would that be the fault of this office not drawing more people in to make them aware of what's going on, or just a lack of interest of our citizens?
Lack of interest. Because it's on the website. We got a marquee. I don't know what else we could do, send smoke signals, or have a plane flying around with a banner on the back. Mm-hmm. Anything short of that, it's not work. And we sent out letters. We sent out a lot of information over the years. A lot of information. Spent a lot of money.
In regards with community events, when we have those events, this office, the council members, the mayor, need to be at those events, at all of those, and talking to the people and making them aware of what's going on, gaining their interest and their trust in this office. You can't just sit here and put things on a website or on the marquee, send out letters and kind of hope for the best. You got to make face-to-face connections with the people in this village.
But the lack of funding has restricted us to have a lot of these outings.
Well, that's where we need to find other ways to generate money, or find people that will volunteer their time, find companies that want to participate in these events.
Yeah.
Got to have food, you have to have drinks.
Right. But as you said, as a small business owner, these guys right now around town, it's not going to have any more expenditure. They're not going to give us any funding because they're running on a fine line,
Right.
just like this village is.
Right.
And believe me, there is no waste. There's no waste. I mean, we've sold cars. We've turned around and cut everything back, short of cutting the services. So it's going to be a very difficult time. I just wanted to see where you're at.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not to pick on you.
Oh, no,
I was hoping the other two could be here this evening because I would have liked to hear the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's important stuff.
It's very
we
important
could
stuff.
sit here and talk about the great stuff, and then what we've accomplished all our lives. But the thing is, we got to get into the meat of it and find out exactly, make this council be stronger. But the problem is, we just need participation from the residents.
Right. We need to have this council out there, on the road, making those contacts with people, that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting here, looking into the camera, website, marquee, passing out letters. That face-to-face. More or less, I guess you could refer to it as a customer service, which I feel is a dying breed. Places you go into these days, customer service isn't there like it was years ago, because people are relying on the computer or marquee sign or letters.
Right.
You got to have that face-to-face interaction. That makes a big point.
But we all live a fast-paced life these days.
Understandable.
And the thing is, it's hard to catch folks home. But I went out and got my 50 signatures to run for council years ago. And the thing is, the main question I was asked, it wasn't anything about the current topics, is when we were getting an in-ground pool. A pool for the community.
Mm-hmm.
Which had nothing to do with
Right.
what we were talking about. But that was a major question.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got to worry about the day-to-day business.
Right.
So,
It is an unfortunate time for all of us.
yeah,
We have to make the best of what we can do.
that's all I had.
Anybody else? I have some questions, if it's okay.
Sure.
and as a citizen, Montanaro. I'll direct this first question to you, Chris. Given the fact that council meetings are made available on DVD, on television, and via the website, and given your interest in running for council for the last 6 months, you indicated that you're not familiar with the numbers. I would ask why you're not familiar with the numbers. If you're running on a platform of fiscal responsibility, if you can address for me, at least at a glance, where the lack of fiscal responsibility has been.
Well, first of all, I'm not familiar with the day-to-day cost operations of this village, so I can't say where we could cut from in order to save money, where we can shift money around.
Are you, is that the end of your answer there? Sort of didn't answer my question, but we'll move on. Are you aware that since 2008, the village has cut its payroll by more than $205,000 a year, and not through the lack of needing those positions, such as the zoning position that you alluded to. And I have been beating the drum for zoning officer, if you would read my mayor's reports for the last 2 years, on a regular basis, that we need a zoning person. But when the hiring of a zoning person was brought up in the same conversation with appropriations and budgeting for it, not enough dollars there. So I guess let me just ask you, are you aware that in the last 4 years the village has decreased its annual payroll by more than $200,000 a year?
I was not aware of the amount.
So at a first glance, it's difficult for you to make a response on where we're lacking in fiscal responsibility.
Correct.
Because I do have some knowledge of this, and because I will be sitting in the audience next year, these are the kind of things that I'll be asking. You indicated that there needed to be face-to-face contact with our residents. I've been very, very visible face-to-face with the people at every Easter egg hunt since I've been the mayor, and prior to that, the concert in the park that you're alluding to, I started that. And obtained the sponsor dollars for it prior to me being the mayor. You talked about being a business owner, self-employed. You and I share that in common. I'm self-employed, and I've been drastically impacted by the economy. And I can tell you that those things like the concert in the park that used to be funded by sponsor dollars, those sponsors are holding on to their dollars. They just don't have the dollars. Not for lack of us trying to get the sponsors. They just are choosing to spend their sponsor dollars in places that they get more bang for their buck, or whatever the case is for their individual circumstances. Finally, the last thing that I have is it's really twofold. You indicated earlier that during the earnings tax discussion that council intended to impose the earnings tax without letting people know. Is that your perception?
Yes.
How did people find out about it?
The community was well aware of it. It was a major topic.
But how did they become aware of it?
I would imagine it was from the council.
Well,
I mean, the word had to get out somehow.
It got out because we called a town hall meeting and invited them to come forward and speak. Now, explain to me how that is doing something behind closed doors and without the people.
I never said it was behind closed doors.
Okay, no, without people knowing about it.
I never said it was without people knowing about it.
Mm-hmm.
All I said was that it was being imposed on the people of this community without their vote.
Okay,
That was the only point I was making there.
all right.
Does that answer your question?
Vaguely.
Okay.
Now, if the earnings tax, if council in the future decides to take to the ballot, this is a question for Todd. If council in the future decides to take the issue to the ballot on the earnings tax, the earnings tax doesn't pass, what happens?
I would assume at that point, when money's run out, which they probably will, then we would go into some type of a physical emergency where the state would come in, and then they would have their protocol and pretty much do what they would tell. We would have to do what they would tell us to do. Probably put a levy on.
Oh, so you'd be raising money another way?
No, we wouldn't. The state would mandate what we had to do. We wouldn't
Right.
have a choice. At that point, our hands would be tied.
Well, I guess the bottom line question is, what happens to the debt? Any debt and any obligations the village has?
It would have to be paid. I'm not sure. I'd have to see what the state said. The state mandates what you can and can't do at that point. So they basically run the village.
If it goes into fiscal emergency? What they do is, as I understand, is they would basically control every expenditure and approve or deny every expenditure. At the end of the day, this village and its residents are still accountable for that debt.
Again, though, the state runs the village.
No, the
Basically.
state doesn't run the village.
They're telling you what you can and can't spend.
Well, they can
how
tell you what you
spend
can
it.
and can't spend. It's up to you to spend it prudently. Do you have any comment to that regard? I mean, not raising the revenue, it's not like it won't, that's not like the debt will go away. So, in not addressing the debt, as council has done for the last 4 years, is saying, I'll pay it later. And when it's a better time. And in my opinion, if you wait for everything to be a better time, it may never happen. In this case, in 2008, council told the voters that by 2012, we're looking at a shortfall in revenue. I'm here to tell you, factually speaking, if the $205,000 annually and salaries hadn't been reduced, that shortfall would have come a lot sooner. And it's been at the cost of positions that are still needed. The workload has just been spread over. The new normal is for a person to wear many hats. And that's the way it is all across America. I'm not suggesting that council or that the village should run any differently. And I want to be clear that the $205,000 annual savings isn't $205,000 each year, totaling $800,000 or it's not that. But over the course of the 4 years since 2008, salaries are decreased by more than $200,000. That's a lot of cutting, and it's a lot of services that are not being provided that should be provided. And for those of us in the village who are paying their property taxes, and what I think is kind of a high property tax, I'd like to feel like I'm getting a good bang for my buck. I'm not sitting here telling you I'm in favor of the earnings tax, but I am sitting here saying that doing nothing is not the answer. And we're rowing backwards upstream.
I think one of the problems that I have right now is when Kevin can give me a final number, a finite number, then I can sit down and talk numbers and budget. But we went, in the last 3 months, we went from 300,000 to 120,000, back to 60,000, to all over the place. And once we get these numbers adjusted and get them finalized and we can sit down and do this, then I can reasonably sit down here and talk when we see a shortfall or when we do not see a shortfall coming.
So, as mayor, what would you do differently to get those numbers?
I hope to sit down with Kevin and figure out why we're not getting those numbers that way.